Hi everybody, it's Zoe Burmester here. We are talking about colour and the use of colour to really accentuate, highlight, bring to life our work. I've got some sugar vegetables here, all of which have been modelled fairly simply out of gum paste and then coloured to help achieve that realism. I'm going to show you here. Why don't we just start with this simple little tomato. This tomato started off life this colour. This is gum paste, which I have put a little bit of red and yellow in to sort of achieve this tomatoey orange colour. I always start lighter than I finish because I like to apply colour on top. Now, especially when you're doing fruit or vegetables or something like this, you have to consider how the fruit has ripened and that the coloration is not even. A tomato, sometimes, yes, you do get a fully red, glossy tomato, but quite often you get a greeny tinge on one side, where it's ripened on the other side, it's a slightly deeper red. So I want to show that on my tomato that I'm recreating. We're gonna do some colouring in a minute, but I'm just gonna show you the difference. So let's have a look here at the green beans. So this is green bean that has just been modelled very simply with some green, I think it was the garden green gel that I used on some gum paste. But you can see the difference between this one and this one, where I've painted on some green, a little bit of brown, just to add that little bit of depth. Nothing in nature is perfect, right? So you're not after perfection, you're after realism. And that's a key difference. So you can see just by doing that, the difference. So the way that I have coloured my pieces, let's just move my corn, move my bits. Do you like my potatoes? Particularly love the potatoes. I took my potatoes out of the pantry and had a look at them as I was making these. They're not a flat brown. There are all sorts of browns going in where they've been scrubbed. I've added some extra dark brown dust here to recreate where they've come out of the mud, right? All that mottling and texture has really helped bring that potato to help bring it to life. So I'm going to show you how I do that. So, as I said before, I use these magic colour dusts. Now, you could airbrush these. You could absolutely airbrush these. I'm not going to airbrush them. I'm going to show you how to hand paint. So, you have dry dusting, and we have what I'd call sort of wet painting. So let's show you. I'm going to show you the difference here. I'm going to take a little bit of green onto my brush. I'm just going to dust that on. Okay. What I like to do as well is to mix a little bit of brown. And where I have made marks and indentations, that dust, like with sugar flowers, is going to fall into those cracks. Okay. This is dry dusting. If I wanted to make a slightly more intense colour, I would mix these dusts. This in here is a rejuvenator spirit or alcohol. I'm going to show you the difference. I'm going to take a little bit of my dust. You can see how by mixing the two together, I'm creating a paint. The weaker I make the wash, the more alcohol I use, the thinner and weaker the paint's going to be. I like to start that way. I like to start with a lighter colour and then add. So I'm just going to paint. And you can see I'm constantly darting in and out. I'm constantly mixing my colours. I don't just want green on its own. I like that tinge of brown. And I'm going to put that at the tips and at the ends. Just going to paint, but you can see that the painting, the difference between the dry and the wet, you have a much more intense colour. And just by painting this little bean and adding a little bit, just a tiny bit of extra colour, how we've brought that to life. Okay, Super simple, tiny little detail, but it makes all the difference. The other thing that I've done on these beans is that when you're working with dust, and if you make sugar flowers, you'll know this, you need to set the dust, especially if it's a dry dust, because otherwise it will transfer all over your cake. So you can either steam them using a steamer or a kettle to set those dusts, or you can spray them with an edible varnish. This is Shell and Shine, and it's an edible varnish in a spray can. I love it. I use it for so many different things. What it does is that it gives your item a really lovely sheen to it. And in the case of these beans, if you sometimes have that slightly sort of waxy quality to them, just by adding a layer of this, it really does make all the difference. Just going to show you quickly the same principle but with the tomato. You can see the absolute difference, and this is how this one started life. This little guy was actually airbrushed, but we can achieve the same effect with hand painting. Always keep a cloth to hand. So I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow and a little bit of green. And always start with your lighter colour first, okay? Start with your lighter colour and then increase. So I'm going to paint, which might seem a little counterintuitive, but I'm going to paint the green on top of the orangey colour, because that's going to represent my non-ripened part of the tomato, okay? You can see how weak I've gone. Subtle, subtle. With this, we're after subtle. Okay, this is going to add. And you can see the difference. I'm just going to show you here. This is without putting too much. Can you see how dark that is? That's the difference when I haven't watered that down or made that weaker. That's too strong for me. I always get a bit scared unless I know I need something very intense. Like I said earlier, I like to start with something that's just a little weaker. Just gives me a bit more control. The nice thing about painting with alcohol, though, is that you can wash and wipe off. If you make a mistake, if you take a cotton bud and dip it into some clear alcohol or rejuvenated spirit, you can take it away quite often if you work quick enough. So you can see, I'm just going to kind of paint that on, paint that around. And yet the colour, our original colour, is still showing underneath and still coming through. So I would just work on that all the way round until I was happy with the coloration. And like I said, fruit ripens in different ways. So I'm going to try and concentrate the redness on one side, just to help with that effect. I'm just going to work my way around until I'm happy and keep going. And again, like the bean, I have sprayed this to give it a lovely glossy look. And then I've put the stalk and the leaves on afterwards because I didn't want them shiny. I wanted those a matte green. So just little tiny details can make a big difference. And really the key with colour, as it is with sculpting, is just observe. Look, observe, and you'll be surprised that just that little bit of extra care will make a world of difference. So, well, get colouring, I guess is what we'll say. So I've sprayed the tomato. I'm going to leave that to dry. But once it is dry, you can just pop in the green top. What you need is just a little dab of edible glue into the hole that we made earlier. I'm just going to, now you can, this is a little bit of green gum paste. You can use a calyx cutter to make a star, or you can cut it freehand, which I did just now because I didn't have a calyx cutter with me. And I'm just going to push that on the top inside the hole like that, and then just position these leaves as you want them. And then I have dab more glue if you need it, and then I've just rolled a tiny little stalk which goes on the top. And then what I want to do is, again, I just want to bring this colour down ever so slightly. I'm going to take a little bit of green, which I'm going to mix with a tiny bit of aubergine. Now, if you have done any sugar flower work at all, you'll know that aubergine is a very common colour that's dusted against green. And it's all really about highlight and contrast. Now, make sure your tomato is dry when you do this, because any dust that does fall will fall off the glaze. Because I'm just showing you, mine isn't completely as dry as I'd like it to be. I'm just going to come in, just add that little bit of colour. You can see already. Just really just does help lift it. And you can also see, hopefully, the difference between the dry dust and then this lovely shine that we've put on our tomato, lovely sheen. And again, it's that contrast which really helps with the colour. So just work on that till you're happy. But there we go. You see, we started with a little ball of orange gum paste, and now we've ended up with some really lovely realistic tomatoes, just through that extra level of adding a little bit of colour. So easy things, right? Just little tips. So have a play. Get your dusts out. Get your gels out. Have a play. Don't think that this is all just for arty people. It's really, really not. Use what you have, and hopefully you'll be really happy and surprised with what you can achieve.